To know who we are, and where we're going, we must know how we arrived here. Welcome to REPHETIC, a revolutionary study of the Great Pyramid, which promises to rewrite civilization's history. And for her second appearance on the REPHETIC podcast, welcome Robelle for part 2.
Oh, hey, thank you. It's an honor to be able to help you out.
Yeah, for sure. And we are honored to talk to you and just pick your brain a little bit. And for people listening, hopefully they've listened to the intro in part 1. And where we left off, so it's spring in the UP, hey?
It sure is. It's finally warmed up, and we are having our first really nice soaking rain.
Yeah, that's good.
Things are good.
Keep that fire danger down, eh?
Yes, it was bad the last 2 days. Everybody was kind of holding their breath because we had really high winds, which is unusual, and real dry conditions.
Yeah, and that lightning and all that stuff, it rolled through here, St. Louis, and then all the tornadoes, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, by the time...
I saw that.
Yeah. So,
scary stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I even mentioning spring in the UP, I think of the return of the robins. Like that was always such a thing when I was a kid. Like the first robin you saw.
Yeah.
Yep,
it's a big celebration when they sing.
Yeah, for sure. Did I ever tell you? I don't know if I ever told you this, but in my experience in nature, like I have a little thing about the crows. Have you ever seen the ravens flying west at dawn, especially in the winter?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So right at dawn, they just streaming west, right? So that's one particular thing. But then the other thing is, have you seen robins flock? Have you seen flocks of robins?
We had a flock of robins in our backyard this spring.
Oh, okay. So in the spring, so in the fall, they flock together. I think even more so right ahead of a severe cold front. They will all get together and they will leave just the day before a major cold front.
Yeah, they're smarter than we are sometimes. I should get up and leave.
Oh my goodness, that's follow the robins for sure, or the sandies, the sandhill cranes. Hey, when I was driving back here, I think it was late February, I saw a pair of sandies coming north. I was like, that's a little bit early, maybe.
They did come back really early this year, but our weather patterns have been so messed up.
Sure.
Yeah.
So flocking robins, particularly before a cold front, but maybe they arrive in a flock as well, right? At the beginning of a warming trend.
They were flocked in our backyard, and they were eating these berries off our, it's called a flowering crab tree, but they're not really crab apples, but they were eating those berries. Mm-hmm. They must have been hungry.
Yeah, and then I'm not sure if I explained it before, but the ravens west at sunrise. I hypothesized this as a kid, or no, that's not accurate. Later in life, I reflected on it and I came up with a hypothesis. Mm-hmm. So in the winter, as the last of the setting sun, they're on a west-facing perch for the night. Okay. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. Just catching every ounce of the sun that they can. And then they stay put. But the second that sun is about to rise, they move from a west-facing perch and they fly west to an east-facing perch to soak in the morning sun.
That makes sense.
I mean, you could argue, now I'd have to do more research, but it appears as though every raven does this. Okay.
Yeah.
You have just streams of them at sunrise, flying west. Now, I would also hypothesize that this is one of the contributing factors of the raven or the crow as this evil deity. Okay.
Yeah.
Flying away from the rising sun of Ra. Okay. So
Oh, okay.
the second the sun god comes, these evil birds fly west away from God. Okay. And
Oh, that's
anyway,
interesting. Very interesting.
yeah, I can't think of another reason why the raven would be so, you know, uh, you know, just characterized as such an evil deity. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
because
there's that.
they
Well,
are not
of course
Ojibwe.
not. And look at the brilliance,
Mm-mm.
eh? The recent
Yeah.
studies and watch the ravens. They're really super smart.
Oh,
And
they are very smart birds.
and I've listened to a lot of different people too, but they will befriend people. Let's say on your
Yes.
walk, if you brought them something, like the next morning, they're there. They're waiting for their
Yep.
treat or whatever, like a dog. So
Yep.
anyway, take us back to Baraga. So this is where we left off from part one. And, and
Okay.
and again, I was only there that 1 year, but
Hmm.
I would pick up on this. I would hear from mom and hear from Jen about all the various things that you guys would attend together,
Yeah.
ceremony or powwow, whatever. And then the 1 year I was able, there was one actually, I think before that, I went to a powwow at NMU in the winter
Uh-huh.
time, like that winter December one or January, whatever it
Yep.
is.
Yep.
So I went there once, and it was just really, like I say, I was just a participant
Yep.
and an observer. Just I had no there was no essence of me being there other than to just participate and observe, and so
Yep.
that's really how I approach the Baraga one. But what are
Yep.
these are intertribals, right?
Yes. They're
Okay,
intertribal powwows. That one at NMU, interestingly enough, it was myself, April Lindela, Fred Shelifo, and oh, I can't remember the young man's name, Dave. His first name was Dave. And the four of us started that powwow back in the spring of 1992.
okay, and
Yeah,
also wasn't there a native student group that is involved or
yes.
took it over also? Okay,
Yeah,
the
we were in that student group, and
okay.
at that time we were just getting the student group started. So anyway, that's how that one was born.
Uh,
And the name was called Learning to Walk Together.
okay.
And from a educational perspective. And we had several elders that came and talked, and we had food demonstrations, and it was an educational powwow. It started out that way, and
Right.
now
Oh,
it's worked its way into just being an annual powwow. Well, not just, but being an annual traditional powwow, no contest.
right.
So,
But it's
so that's a good one. That's a good one for people who are starting out and learning.
yeah, and it's in the dead of winter. So,
Yes, and people are shackwacky in the UP, and they're real happy to get to powwow.
did you say shack wacky?
Oh, I did.
People don't know what that is. Explain the cabin fever. Explain the
Oh,
shack wacky
shackwacky is when you've been cooped up in the house for weeks, not days,
and months. Yes.
weeks and months on end in absolutely sub-zero weather and snow piled up to your ears. And yeah, you get a little bit crispy.
To put it lightly, that's
Yeah,
that's great. Great. That's great. Well,
yeah,
listen, the history on so the NMU powwow and you and what was it, 4 or 5 others put it together.
yeah.
That's great. That's amazing history.
It was
Um,
amazing. And the thing was, we didn't have a very big budget
right.
to work with, as a student organization. So we donated a lot of things like for the giveaway and for the meal and stuff. People brought in fish fillets and venison, and so it really was a community effort. And it the first one just went over so amazingly well that they picked it up and made it an annual event, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and now this native student group is still a pillar of the university, and
Yes,
along with Michigan, the funding programs, right, and grant programs for
yes.
native continuing higher education.
Yep, yep. So yeah, the group at the time was called ACES, it's American Indian Science and Engineering students.
Right.
And I think it may have changed hands since then,
Mm-hmm.
the student organization itself, but still, very core to bridging the gap between the educational system and the Native American way and concept
Right.
of living. So yeah, it's a real good thing to have.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. That's awesome. And
So
yeah, go ahead.
Baraga. I want to talk about Baraga
Yeah.
because you keep asking.
Yeah.
Baraga powwow, I'm going to give you a little bit of history as I know it,
Yeah.
from what I've learned over the years. I've been going there since probably 1983. But the history is, and I think a lot of people don't know this
And that's
about Native American history,
yeah,
is
that's
that
41 years, by the way.
we did not gain the right in the United States of America to practice our Native traditions and religions till 1978
Hmm.
in a country based on religious freedom.
Right.
Now, that's pretty amazing
Oh
to
my
think
God.
about.
So religious freedom for us, but not for you.
Right. Not for the original inhabitants. In fact, people were sent to jail. Like if they
Any
organized,
practice, yeah.
yep, anything that the government, because they were very threatened by it, and I don't know why, but anyhow, that's a whole nother subject. But so 1978 is the key date, and Baraga, from my understanding, there are people like Ted Hollipa, Fred Shelifo, oh shoot. Well, just different names up there. Donnie Dowd comes to mind. They got together, and of course, the Vietnam War had just ended, and you had a lot of people with a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder and things like that. And they decided that they were going to rededicate their sacred land and their sacred space and welcome home their warriors. And so that was part of the history of how that powwow started up there. And it drew in people from everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, they traveled hundreds of miles to be there. The people were so hungry. And the warriors coming home never had their proper ceremonies, because it had been outlawed at that time. So that powwow, if I'm not mistaken, the first one was like 1979, if I'm right on that. But they always started the weekend with a spiritual gathering where they would have elders come and talk about the old ways. And these are the elders that went incognito and underground during that time when they weren't allowed to practice their ways.
Yeah, through risk of being jailed.
Right. Right. So they would teach, and people were just so hungry. Those circles were always full, and a lot of times there would be non-natives that would show up, and those circles were so healing. They were so powerful. I can't even put it into words. So that's how I started out, and of course then I met Julie along the way and your mom along the way, and our circles started to form. I talked before about circles within circles, and we were a group of women that really wanted to learn the old ways and to understand the old ways, because most of us came from a Christian background, born and raised Christian, and realizing that nobody had ever asked our ancestors what they believed or what they thought. And our parents didn't want us getting in trouble, so they didn't teach us,
Right.
So you had a whole generations, not just one, that were really, really hungry. And so that's how I met your mom and Julie and Linda Connor and different ones. And we were on that trail together. And so then we started traveling together.
Yeah.
And it became a priority for us.
Right.
And in that process, we learned that our people, they had a faith. They had a very strong faith. And it was very misunderstood. People thought that we worshiped nature. We didn't worship nature, but we did respect nature as being part of the creation and have the humbleness to realize that all we are is one little speck in
Mm.
that creation, and that we, being the one little speck, have pretty well messed things up.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yeah.
look around, it's us humans. If we were out of the equation, nature would survive and flourish. It's
Yeah.
we who have messed up the planet.
Well, and
So,
even if not the planet, because we saw how quick the planet rebounded, right,
oh
during COVID.
yes,
Like
oh yes,
if you stopped for a week,
yep,
Mother Earth says, "Okay, let me take this back from you." So
yep, yep,
that was so remarkable to witness.
yes. And
Yeah.
isn't it humbling? I mean, that really humbles you. How can we as human beings be so arrogant as to think that we have all the answers? We don't.
Yeah, yeah, and that is that is the essence of humility. And I
Yes,
suppose it would seem any spiritual practice or even dogma or doctrine or whatever, like if it's not on a foundation of humility, like
right.
it's not even worth me considering any of its other qualities, really. So,
Yes, yes,
well, and you could expand that into, let's say, exceptionalism, wherein I'm exceptional, my people are exceptional, my family's so like there's 8 billion of us, right? Well, explain to
right.
me how exceptional you really are, right?
Exactly,
And
exactly.
if you even try to do that, you've already lost. So,
Yeah.
one of
I
8 billion. So,
was
yeah.
listening to a young man the other night. I listen to podcasts, believe it or not.
Okay. All right then.
But this young man from Red Lake, I call him a young man. He's probably around 50, but anyhow,
Oh,
he
goodness.
um he was talking about the great migration of the Anishinaabe people, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi we
Yeah.
call them. But anyway, he
Migration
talked
from where? Where?
from the East
Okay.
Coast down
Okay.
the St. Lawrence
Yeah. Yeah.
Seaway
Yeah.
up
Through
through the Great
Erie,
Lakes.
Ontario, Great Lakes. Sure. Sure. Sure.
Yep, all the
Right.
way out to Turtle Mountain. And anyway, his point in telling all of this was that each community of Ojibwe have varying teachings,
Yeah.
but the golden thread of truth runs amongst all the teachings. So for instance, if I were to go to Red Lake and say, well, this is how we do it. That's how we would say it. This is how we do it where
Sure.
I
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
How do you do it here?
Yeah.
Because even though it may be the same ceremony, say Sweat Lodge or Medewan ceremony or Sundance ceremony, this is how we do it in our community. How do you do it here?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So
That don't. So you're listening to this podcast of this guy. So the thread of that, I describe it as, so you share subjectively, right?
yes,
There's no objective framework in through which everyone has to squeeze their practice or their subjectivity.
exactly.
Right. Okay.
Exactly. That was his point. Even how we speak the language,
Yes.
the dialects are very different, but we understand one another,
Sure.
you
Sure.
know? Even in the English language, when I go down south, I understand what they're saying, but their dialect and maybe some of their euphemisms and everything may be vastly different from
Yeah.
mine,
I,
you know?
I have a joke there. Can I say it? Let me say it. So,
Sure.
of the people in the South, my question is: if I send them an email, do I need to type slower?
That's funny.
I'm sorry.
And what do they say?
Well, most of them don't get it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so
Oh,
it's all funny, funny, funny.
in the vein of having respect for individuality and individual expression. Um, how I would perceive things, how your mother would perceive things, how Julie may have perceived things when we went to ceremony could have been vastly different. And yet the thread of truth was still there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what you find common ground in.
Yeah, for sure. And so I don't know where it happened, but anytime, as soon as you try, it's like here in the internet age or the data age or instant communication age, right? With just the flood of information and data and news, whatever, right? The second you print something, it's already out of date. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you could, some new research or whatever, and you go to print with it. It's printed in an academic journal. The day that comes out, someone else is discovering something which just nullifies your printing to, some relic of history and or as inaccurate. So the folly seems to be, let me quantify, like empirically and objectively, what this spiritual essence needs to be. And then I'm going to give you the book on it. And then this is how you're supposed to experience it. Here's how you're supposed to pray. Here's the depth of your reverence for the tenets or the ceremony or the ritual, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus, so when you try to quantify it and you try to write it down and you try to say it needs to fit this objective framework, the second you try to do that, you're automatically wrong.
Absolutely.
Because you're not allowing for the individual to experience the entire thing their own way.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but like these things fit these conceptual frameworks, I think.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. And the point that young man made was the same point you're making, maybe in different ways of expressing it. But the fact of the matter is, our way of life, the Ojibwe way of life, was never written in a book. And there isn't a manual that tells you this is how you do it and this is the way it has to be done. And we don't have spiritual police to tell you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is the only way we can do it. This is the only way it's done. And this is the right way and you're wrong. We don't have that. People will exchange ideas freely, but they do it in a real quiet way. And another thing that was taught to me is that sometimes we as human beings will fill up space with words, meaningless words.
Right.
And meaningless arguments
Are you talking about me?
No.
Stop
no,
it.
No,
I'm just kidding.
I'm saying human beings in general, and most especially, Bob and I just saw an example of this morning on YouTube. We were watching a YouTube video, and this guy was really preaching it, man. He was preaching it, and he was fast and furious and loud and proud, and he wasn't saying anything. Nothing. There was nothing from what that man was saying that Bob and I could take away.
Right.
He was just filling up the space with his opinions that were meaningless and not based in fact. And we as human beings have a tendency to do that. We fill up those beautiful silent spaces with meaningless words.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things in Ojibwe culture. We learn the value of silence and being quiet.
Yeah.
And we're really comfortable with that.
Yeah. And okay. And this ties into something I talk about with my buddy Todd and Jeremy. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to call it like a conscripted meditative time or a meditative activity, right? Let's say you go for your walk. Is that a conscripted meditative practice? No, you're in a meditative state, right?
Yes.
It
Yes.
doesn't have to be a set aside. It could happen in your car. It could happen at a playground watching kids play. It could happen walking the dog. It could happen when you're walking the woods. It could happen while you're on the shitter. You know,
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
am I listening? Am I listening? Am I in a state to receive and be guided? Right? This is so
That's
super
exactly it.
simple. This is so fucking simple. But we've,
But we make it difficult.
oh,
We human
of
beings make it
course,
difficult.
yeah,
Even,
we confound it with all these
yes.
words you're saying and pages and it's like, no, 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 it's not that difficult, man.
And
That's
even amongst denominations in Christianity, we can take a Bible verse and tear it to pieces and
yes.
redirect it the way we want it to mean.
Okay, right.
And
Okay, but
and
what's
then we use it like a weapon
yeah,
against
yeah.
one another.
Sure.
You
And okay,
know,
right.
uh,
And so what's in there? What's the end game of that as you see it?
the end game to me is power and control.
Okay, and to make yourself or your own group exceptional.
Absolutely. Yep,
Okay, right? Which is void of humility.
exactly.
So I'm not listening to
Yep.
those people.
Well, you know, when I get in a situation where people are debating scripture,
Right?
I shut down. I just shut right down.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just, I don't know if that's from childhood trauma or where that comes from, but I just shut completely right down and I cannot talk. I can't talk.
Yeah, yeah. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. Well, okay, so this subjective experience, this humility, here as an outsider, as I observed it, right? And then again,
Yeah.
tying this back to Beriga. So what I observed, you tell me, is there not the greatest expression of that individuality, the greatest celebration of that subjectivity, right? Is
Yes.
is in your ceremonial dress and the power, the
Yes.
circle, and the drums and the vibration, right? And so I,
Yep.
I have a couple of pictures that I took, which probably shouldn't have taken, okay? but
Okay.
I'm not making a dime off them, but I took some pictures as these hundreds of people came around the circle. And just the
Yeah.
expression with the ceremonial dress, men and women, was just
Yes.
so astonishing. So explain that to me. And the rest of the ignorant, dumb white people that don't know a fucking thing about native culture. Okay?
Oh, I wouldn't call it quite like
No,
that,
I
but
know. That's
you
why
have a
I
way
said
with
it.
words.
That's why I said it that way. So,
Yeah.
and
I
I,
think sometimes ignorance is just that. It's ignorance because you're not raised with it and you don't
or
understand
just
it.
didn't learn it yet. I know. And again,
Yeah.
I include myself first and foremost in that because I mean, unless I know, unless I at some point realize that I need to know something
Yeah.
about a
Yeah.
person or a culture, whatever, I just don't learn it. I'm just fully ignorant, you know?
I think that's totally true of all of us.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's true of all of us. But the difference between being ignorant and being stupid is when you're ignorant, you know you're ignorant, you're quiet and you're open to learning
Yeah, more
and
humility,
observing.
sure.
Yeah.
And describe,
Stupidity is being presented with another culture and just shutting them right down and saying that's dumb, you
oh,
know,
sure, yeah.
rather than being quiet, watching and learning and listening.
Yeah, so
And
you
so
would say
much of
that's
my,
stupid.
yeah, that's stupidity when you're presented with the facts and you refuse to accept them.
Right. Or you read an email and you don't realize that the person slowed down who sent it to you. That would be stupid too.
Okay.
Anyway, tell me about the ceremonial dress. Tell me about
Okay.
males, females, if there's any you know, a distinction amongst
There are
dress and all that.
distinctive
Sure.
there are distinctive ways, and mostly it's being in tune with your own self, what style that you're called to dance, and your outfit will very much reflect that. Like your colors reflect who you are as an individual. Maybe some of the design patterns on your outfit will speak of your individuality. And when you're out there dancing, it's fun. You can have fun while you're out there. It's not a big solemn like going to church occasion, but it's really deeply spiritual and it's really deeply personal between you and your creator. And it's hard to put that into words because even while you're out there and you're dancing and you may be in a meditative state or you might be praying for somebody, you still have a good time. Like somebody might come by and crack a joke as they dance past you. And we always talk about needing that balance. Things can never be so serious that you can't have that balance of laughter.
Yeah.
And if you go to a Native funeral, very often when things are really, really desolate, someone will get up and start cracking jokes.
Right. Yeah.
Or
Levity,
do
sure.
something to bring in that levity, because we as human beings have to have that balance. We have to have that balance.
Yeah.
So at powwow, most especially at Berga, they're really good about the MC will explain what's going on.
Yeah.
And may even take a few minutes to digress and give a teaching. Like, for instance, when the jingle dress dancers are coming out, if they're coming out to pray for somebody for healing and it's very specific, he'll take time to explain where that dress came from, how it came to be with the people, why it's considered a healing dress nowadays, and maybe even the lifestyle that goes along with it and how each individual dress is made. They take time to explain those things. And they'll do the same thing when they break the dances down into categories.
Yeah.
When the male traditional dancers are going to go out, they may explain why they wear their bustles or, what the significance of each part of their regalia is and what their dance represents.
Yeah, or
And they'll do
the
that.
staffs, right? The various
Yes.
staffs. Okay. And also the homage to service members and respect,
Yes.
right? All this. Both,
All of it.
again, the nation within the nations, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then they, like you just hit on a thing, when they honor the veterans, it's not just Native veterans. They call for any veteran who ever served in any branch, come on out and dance.
Yeah.
And if your loved ones never had this opportunity and you're a descendant of a veteran, you come and you dance in their honor. So it's not exclusive. It's very inclusive.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. And then there will be the times where only people in regalia can be in the arena.
Yeah,
and
sure.
they explain all that, why we're doing it this way right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not
What do they call
exclusive.
those? Opens? All tribe? What do they call them?
Yeah, when everybody can dance, they'll say this is an intertribal, even if you're not Native.
Yeah,
Come on down and dance.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, go ahead.
The purpose of that, we dance in the circle because no one is greater than anybody else. We dance to bring harmony into our communities. We dance to unify divisions within our communities. I mean, there's many, many reasons why we dance, and sometimes there'll be a special dance to try to unite opposing forces.
Mm-hmm.
So there's many, many reasons, and you can't give a crash course in Ojibwe 101 because it's a learning thing, and I've been walking this way 45 years, and I got to tell you, I know what I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
you
still
know that there
learning.
is much that you don't know. Sure, yeah, yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that, I
I'm
mean,
nobody.
that's the marker of humility. That's the marker of wisdom. That's, of course it is, right?
Yes. And you
Wow.
know what? The other thing, Dave, I'm not ashamed to say that if somebody comes and wants to talk to me and they have a specific question and I cannot answer it, I will be honest enough to say so. And I will try to point them to somebody within the community who has that knowledge
Yeah,
and
yeah.
can talk to them.
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so the dance circle. So everyone's individually, you're having your experience. Everyone collectively is going around the center.
Yes.
Like you said, there's the different male dance practices, female dance practices, homage to veterans or other unifying.
Hmm.
There's different types of dances for different purposes, right? Or the
Right.
intertribals. So, and then the describe for me the care. Like Jen had her outfit, my mom had her outfit, you have yours, right? Which the
Yeah.
Copenhagen can lids do really good
Yeah.
for the ladies to make their dresses too, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
describe putting together your ceremonial dress, or
Well,
anyone. What goes into them
each one
putting
of
their
them, each one of them will they'll spend time. I know this sounds cliche or whatever, but they do spend quiet time in prayer, and you wait until in your mind's eye and your heart's eye you can see what you are supposed to put together and why. I mean, as you're waiting for these things, teachings will come to you. They might come through another person. You might be sitting in circle and you have an aha moment, but you take your time. You never hurry, and you know, you never show up to powwow and you see somebody dancing and go home and make a dress.
right?
That's not how it works.
Yeah,
You have to feel the calling. It's a calling.
yeah. Okay, okay.
And many of our people, many Native people never dance.
Yeah,
They're only called to go to ceremony.
yeah. Okay.
And they're called to be a helper in the community, and they're busy doing for the community. Like,
Yeah,
I know a group of ladies that don't dance, but they make quilts, and they make quilts and they send them overseas. They
yeah.
make quilts and they give to the sick, you know? So, so the powwow is not the center of spirituality for Native communities.
Hmm.
It's just another means, and it's a way to let the public see and experience and understand some of our teachings.
Okay, and so this happens. And tell us again, this was outlawed. You couldn't practice your native spiritual ceremony or practices or whatever, even speak the language. What the
Right.
various acts and governmental
Yeah.
laws till when? 78, you're saying?
1978 with the National Indian Religious Freedom Act, and it
Okay.
was passed in Congress.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So until 1978, basically anything that natives did was illegal. And the boarding schools were part of that era. They were to drive the Indian out but save the human, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a whole nother can of worms, and I'm not going
Sure,
down
of
that one.
course. Oh God. Right, right, right.
That
But
could be that.
yeah, let me throw in
I've
one
been in
thing.
ceremonies now where they are trying to heal those generational wounds,
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm telling you, I have sat through ceremonies for that and just
yeah.
wept at the trauma involved. And it's a whole nother subject for a whole nother day. And to be honest with you, I don't feel that I can address that because I never went to a boarding school.
Right, right.
So for me to try to address someone else's generational trauma would really be doing them an injustice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, anyone listening, oh goodness. So my experience, even just skirting the edge as a visitor, right? Let me be
Yeah.
clear. So what I do now, even, I will put a powwow music up the whole powwow on a YouTube or something, and I will listen to it,
Yes.
or some
Hmm.
collection of even the drumming, and not just the
Yeah.
whole particular powwow, but just even the collection of drumming. And also my time there in Marquette or my time in Baraga, okay, is I cannot even hear the native drum circle. I cannot hear it without the pain of the ancestry just piercing right through to my gut.
Yeah.
Can't do
Yep.
it. I can't do it. And so I would challenge anybody to sit down and listen to some powwow drum series compilation. Just put
Yeah.
it on. I don't know the fucking words, hey?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
the words more again, I don't want to know the words, okay? I really
Well, some
don't.
of the words, some of the songs are in the various native
Yeah,
languages,
dialect,
but
sure. Yeah, yeah.
some of them are strictly what they call vocables,
Yeah, yeah,
and they're
okay.
sung right from the spirit. They have no
Yeah,
words,
okay.
but they're sung from the spirit.
And
Yeah.
those are probably the ones that move me the most, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just can't just the it's I'm not even gonna it's ineffable. Let's just use that word. So
That's a good way to put it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But and then the other thing that the other thing that happens if I put on music or language that I don't understand, I think I might have mentioned this somewhere else. I might have mentioned our last podcast, but I don't
Hmm.
get distracted by the meaning of the words because I don't know what they are, you know.
Right.
I can just
Right.
show up to the music and the emotion of the vocals. It's like
Yes. And be present.
it's the vibration that matters, not the word.
Right.
So
Right.
anyway, some of the vocals just pierce through time and space, and you understand. Not that's
Because they're ancient. They're
yeah,
ancient. They're
yeah,
passed down from generation to generation, and they're ancient.
yeah, and
And
I
that's a
think
hard thing to try to explain to people who are listening because some people say, "Oh man, that just sounds like noise to me. All that pounding and hollering." It's
yeah,
not for you then,
yeah,
you know?
and
If that's how you feel, it isn't yours. Don't pick it up. Walk away,
yeah, yeah, and I guess
but don't criticize.
this would be true of the Psalms or other, spirituals or whatever, right? So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
to
Yeah.
any given people, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and again, you listen to it, me and my, let's just call it my privileged, 21st century life, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm really insulated in my daily life. I'm insulated from interacting with
Yeah.
the music, the message, the whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. But I don't want to get so far away that I don't plug in.
Right.
So and with full
And I
respect,
have to say, even in my life, I am privileged. I
yeah,
mean, I have a house. I have 3 squares a day.
yeah,
My husband and I worked for a living. We never had a lot of money, but we live a good life.
sure,
We we for lack of a better word, we have been blessed, you know? And 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 I don't take that for granted,
hmm,
but nor would I take that and lord it over somebody else,
yeah,
and say to them, this is what you have to do in order to get what we've got. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
How arrogant. How
sure, yeah,
arrogant.
yeah,
We have to learn how to accept one another in our human condition and in our humanness, right where we're at without all these expectations. Like, if you will listen to me and you will do this, then maybe I can learn to accept you. No, we need to accept one another right where we're at and build from there.
Yeah.
To build one another up, not tear one another down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again too, let's look at you can always look at the fruit of something, right? It's like
Yes.
is doctrine a unifying principle? The principles in the doctrine, is it unifying or does it create division? Right, like we were talking
Correct.
about earlier. Oh, your interpretation. Oh, your interpretation. Well, you're a bad Christian. You're a great Christian. I'm the best Christian. It's like,
Yes,
what's
yes.
everybody talking about? And so
Yeah,
you, again, on the foundation of humility and with the principle of unity, is what I'm doing unified? Is it open, like you were saying,
yeah,
inclusive rather than exclusive, right? Oh,
right.
so you're not in the club. Well,
Yeah, yeah,
frankly, if you have a club, I don't want to be a part of it. Like, let's start
right.
there. And so
Yeah,
give me the system that is no system. Give me the club where there is no club.
yeah.
That's kind
And
of
my
yeah.
my big thing is when I speak, I want to speak from a place of love and compassion.
Hmm.
And if indeed I see something in your life that upsets me and I think, ooh, I don't like what I'm seeing there.
Hmm.
Am I going to apply healing to that or am I going to apply condemnation?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And when I die and when I leave this earth, if I'm going to be seen as having an error in my judgment and my thinking, I want to err on the side of compassion and love. I want to help heal. I want to draw out the best in people. And am I going to mess that up in my humanness? Am I going to screw up and make mistakes? You doggone right I am. But I want to come back to that place and say, ooh, I really messed that up. How can I do better next time?
Yeah.
And that's the type of human being I want to be.
Well, I think you are that type of human
Well,
because you've been on this path a while. So,
I have been, but I'll tell you what, I have to say, sometimes at the end of the day when I look at
right.
how I handled a situation or what I might have said to somebody, even off the cuff without thinking, I can see next time I better do better at that.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
to be a little bit more compassionate.
Yeah. We all have
Yeah.
these their progressions and regressions at any moment of any
Yes.
day, right? So,
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
so okay, if that's the case, and there's 8 billion of us doing that, what's the key component? The key component seems to be at some point, either in the day as it develops, or at least by the end of the day, is like, well, how did I do today? Right?
Yes.
Do I owe an
Yeah.
amends? Did I this? Did I that? It's just owning your
Yeah.
owning your shit, and then
Yeah. Personal inventory on a daily basis.
yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
I can't take your inventory and you can't take my inventory, but I think it's safe to say that we each need to take our own inventory
Yeah,
and be willing to be responsible enough to own when we've messed up. And maybe sometimes it does mean we have to go and make amends. Maybe it just means we need to make amends to ourselves, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. Like a
But to
living
have
change.
that
Yeah,
compassion and to be willing to look at it.
yeah. And look at I mean, what. Okay, so what's the fruit of that? The fruit of that is we build these super strong friendships where each person's doing that, right? Your family
Yes.
bonds, right? Everybody's willing. The second you say I'm not willing, right? Or I'd rather be
Yeah.
right than peaceful,
Right.
you're just separating yourself from the bond or the group or the whatever. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I was talked to Jeremy yesterday, and like you're saying, taking your own inventory, not somebody else's, whatever. But we can hold a mirror. It came up that it's
Yes.
the trickster role, right? Or Coco or whoever.
Yes.
The trickster role is I like to be the one holding the mirror. Now I'm fully comfortable holding it so that I can see
Yeah.
myself also, right? Start there. Start
Yes.
there. But
Yep.
I'm
And
really
that's the truth. If a person really rubs you the wrong way, usually it's because there's something inside of you that is starting to bubble to the surface that you need to work on.
yeah, and
At
you
least
spot
that's been my personal experience.
yeah, you spot it, you got it. That's it.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
yeah, you see that thing in someone else, it's like, boy, I really don't like that in myself.
Right. Right. And I'm going to work on that.
Yeah. Or you just
Yes.
smile like you're saying, even in, let's say, quiet, solemnity. Is
Yes.
right because you see it and you're like, oh, I've seen that in myself before, and
Yeah.
that's a tough one to get through. I
That can be pretty intense.
Yeah, and I'm saying you don't even have to most of the time. You don't have to say it. Like
Right.
that's if done properly, right? The teacher learns way more than the student
That is true.
because you can't you cannot shortcut someone's path. You can't give them wisdom which you possess. You
Right.
so as they're gonna traverse this path, you can smile and learn. You're learning by the way each person is approaching these things.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
which you could only learn from your own experience as you approached it. But now here you
Yep.
got everybody dealing with the thing that you dealt with, but you only did it in your own way. Now you get to really learn how this group or these friends or this family goes through it. So,
Yep.
I and I'm not even
I had an elder once. I grew up being acculturated to be a placater and a fixer. In
yeah.
fact, Bob teasingly will say, "Okay, Michael Cohen,"
Oh, yeah.
and then I have to check myself at the door. But that growing up, that was my role. And I had an elder once tell me when they saw me just consternating over, oh my gosh, what can I do to fix this? How can I repair the breach? And blah, blah, blah. And they said, wait a minute, wait a minute. We each come into this life with lessons to learn. And what you are attempting to do is to negate that person's lesson
Yeah.
and ease the pain of learning it. You need to keep your nose out.
Yeah, sure, sure,
Holy
sure.
cow, that was huge for me.
What are
That
they?
was huge.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
gave me permission to step away,
yeah, yeah.
and just let things unfold.
And
It was huge.
doesn't that fall into what they say is there's only two spiritual sins. One is to interfere in someone else's spiritual path, and the other one is to interfere in your own.
Yes, yes. Boy, is that true too.
And
That is,
these little quips and axioms, right? Cliche. Well, they're not so cliche and they're not so well known either. But the reason they become cliche or quips or axioms is because they're so fucking true, you
yes,
know?
yes. And they are such basic human actions
Yeah,
and thoughts,
yeah,
you know?
sure. Well, and
Well,
that's,
my friend always tells me, hey, honey, if you ain't growing, you're going.
yeah, sure. That's true. That's true. Yeah, the pruning hurts. There's so many of
Oh,
these things, right?
yeah.
And we're just on this human experience. And then, but here's another quick thing, perspective wise, that I come across, particularly in my work on Egypt and the history and the book and the pyramids, whatever,
Yeah.
is I think we lose like nobody. I don't know. Maybe some people do, but Do I consciously walk around and in my state of being, do I fully recognize the 315,000 year history of our subspecies? Right?
Right.
It's like,
How many of us even ever stop to think about that?
well, I would argue that the wise might. It's like you
Yes.
might want to
Yes.
gain some perspective on yourself,
Yes.
In a quest towards humility, you might want to know how what's going on with all of
Yeah.
this whole trend. Let's call it a trend. Let's call it, and I've did I tell you that I'm doing a little bit of wordplay in my writing, right?
Mm. Okay.
So I'm getting rid of, at least as far as although I just used the word history, right? You know
Hmm.
where that came from, right? His story
Yes. Yes.
from,
We always say her story.
well,
Her story.
okay, yeah, fine, okay. So there it is. There's the line has been drawn, right? So
Yeah.
the line
But how about
between,
their story?
okay, okay. So his story, her story, their story. How about history? The story of us.
Yeah, there you go. That's really, I like that.
Okay, so anyway, I'm using that, well, in stark contrast also to any, engendered, you know,
Yeah.
identity types or whatever. Anyway, I just want to get rid of the divisions. It's like let's just
Oh,
talk about
so do I.
or
So do I.
our story. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm doing some of that, and I think that's interesting. I think there's new little spaces. Which although I hate the use of that word, there's frontiers that we can perhaps peek over the next horizon.
I kind of feel like we're in, for the lack of a better word, we're in a vortex where people are becoming more aware of those divisions. And there are, I think the majority of us want to overcome that. We want to see language that brings unity. We want to see an understanding and a mutual respect. We don't have to agree. Like, for instance, this whole thing with the abortion issue that's sweeping the country right now,
Hmm.
on a personal level, on a personal level, I would never have an abortion.
Right. Right.
I just, I wouldn't. But do I have the right to say to the mother down the street who whose life is in jeopardy and may not even live through the pregnancy, do I have the right to shake my finger in her face and say, oh no, you better not do that. You're going to go to hell?
Yeah.
That's not my right.
Yeah. Right.
That is not my privilege.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that at somehow, some way, we have to come to a place of respect and not having that kind of control over one another. And maybe even not even talking about it out loud. You know, what you do, what decisions you make between you and your doctor, that's your personal business
Yeah. Sure.
and is protected by your HIPAA rights.
Yeah.
It's not Congress's business. It's not the Supreme Court's business, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
okay.
that's just one example. I'm
Sure.
just using that as an example, and I don't mean to make further division.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I just think that there's a better approach and there's a better way. And I think there is a lot of us who are seeking how can we better approach these things that divide us? And how can we remove the rhetoric, the hate rhetoric, from our discussions? And how can we walk away at the end of the day and say, okay, we're never going to agree on this. But, but, just live and let live at the end of the day. How do we do that? How do we as a humanity find that?
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
I'm digging for. That's what I'm mining for.
Yeah.
I want the day to come when we can disagree without being hateful to one another.
Sure. Sure. Well, let's look at that. Let's look at that concept for a quick second. So I think the first thing we can recognize, we saw this in the gay rights, marriage legislation, things like this, right? We saw
Yeah.
this such that you don't like gay marriage, don't do it. Don't.
Yeah,
Okay. You don't.
exactly.
You're really against abortion, and you're a man. Guess what? You don't ever have to confront that decision, right?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
or
But you
or
can confront the decision not to have sex with
well,
somebody
sure,
and
yeah,
accidentally procreate.
sure. Yeah. You're
Be
especially
responsible.
yeah. Well, yeah. But even too, accidents happen, whatever.
They
But
do. Well,
but
yeah.
but the thing is, if I don't like something, my power and authority and autonomy and stay in my hula hoop. That's where
Yes.
that's all. That's the only place for it.
Yep.
I don't get to put my standards on someone else, right?
No.
That
No.
that creates problems,
Yep.
So
We have this huge debate right now in Congress and the Senate that, the United States of America, the founding fathers based the Constitution on the religion of Christianity. And that could not be farther from the truth.
yeah,
If
true,
you
true.
really do, if you study American history and you dig further than just history books, you look at actual American history, the idea of separation of church and state was what drove our founding fathers. And within our founding fathers, there were many who were not Christians.
Yeah,
And we're not praying for
yeah,
for this new nation.
yeah,
They
yeah.
just were bent for leather to get the job done. So I guess what I'm saying is we need to really be careful as human beings how we approach something. And I, for one, if we go back, if the people in the Congress and the Senate who are fighting for this idea that we need to become a Christian nation, what's that going to do? Or all that progress we've made, like the 1978 Indian Religious Freedom Act, what's that going to do to that? Are we going to start then again punishing people
Right.
who have a different view?
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Or
saying?
yeah, for sure. And let's not forget that
Let's not forget
let's not
how
forget.
things went down.
Yeah. And the very book that the slavers used to justify owning people is the
Yep,
same Bible.
exactly.
And in the Old
This is where
Testament,
I'm talking
yeah, I
about
know. It's just,
interpretation,
yeah, sure. Anyway, there's certain and we can wrap things up here too, and I got some stuff to do, but there's a few things that really don't make sense to me. Okay, number one, I mentioned this before too. Did I ever tell you when I went to the Smithsonian Native American Museum?
No.
Well, anyway, I went there, give or take, I don't know, 15 years ago. It may have changed since then, but when I went there was a central wall through the museum on one particular floor. One half of the wall had a bunch of guns on it. The other half of the wall had a bunch of Bibles on it. Okay?
Yep. Whoa, there's a juxtaposition, isn't it?
Yeah. And again, I don't think that capturing the native culture after colonialization is really representative of the culture. Okay. I don't think
Right.
that's, now it is part of the story, but it's, you know, it's like
Yeah.
saying that the human culture includes the automotive cult, let's say, of what we
Yes.
think about our cars and what cars mean in society, things like this. Well, that's not
Hmm.
really the essence of the human culture.
No, it isn't.
You know, it's part of the current story. It's a segment,
Yes.
it's a chapter, if you will. But
Yeah.
they really glorified the Christian, the conversion of the natives to Christianity,
Yeah.
et cetera, all that. And then here's other things that just don't make any sense to me. And I mentioned this before, how freed slaves, took the name of their masters, took the religion of the people that enslaved them. That
Right.
does not make sense to me. And,
It doesn't.
and
It doesn't.
I haven't, and again, let me just claim ignorance, but somebody explain that to me of
Yeah.
how is that reasonable? How is it reasonable for the heritage of enslaved people not to reclaim their own cultural identity, even though it was stripped from them? Now, this is true of the native people as well, right? So,
Yes.
but then the focus becomes reclaiming the original cultural essence of who you are, not just adopting the
Right.
conquerors or the imperialists or the slaveholders, not adopting their religion or even their name, let's say. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I think the focus, for me, let me just say, I could see the focus being on recapturing the essence of the culture and the people and the spirituality, or even the name,
Yeah.
of my own heritage, not something given to me by somebody else. So,
I think that's the real struggle in Native America nowadays, and healing will come through that struggle to recognize the generational trauma that's been done by colonization.
right.
And it's going to take a lot of time and effort to rake back the leaves to the way we used to do it. Will we ever go back to living in teepees and being nomadic people? Absolutely not. We're beyond that. The damage is done. But we can regain the essence of our spiritual walk and our spiritual ceremonies and teach our children those values and those concepts that were so vitally important, but have been lost along the way. And I think the struggle is real right now to do that. And I think it's true of not only Native culture, but in Black communities, we're seeing the healing of all that generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't happen overnight. It's not like you can wave a magic wand and boom, everything's going to be okay. It's a process.
Yeah.
And we're in that process.
And
We're all part of that process.
and the aim is not to be separate, but to
Right.
claim your own culture and then share amongst the other cultures within the melting pot, right?
Yes.
Just
Yes.
reclamation, reclaim your culture, your identity, your
Yep.
practices, get to the essence of who you are, both individually, in a family, in a culture, or as a globe, right? And
Yep.
and
Yep.
this really also, my work on Egypt and history, as I'm calling it, really speaks
Hmm.
to that exact same objective that you just outlined. So,
Right.
Rebelle,
Right.
2 sessions on the podcast. Thank you so much. I love you.
Well, thank you for having me, Dave, and it's an honor to be able to share these thoughts with you.
Yeah, and I may get up this summer to visit you, or hopefully maybe see you, and then we'll just keep carrying on, carrying on. I appreciate your wisdom. I appreciate your
Yep.
words, your
Well,
thoughtfulness,
thank you.
and sharing this with just whoever's going to listen. So it's super valuable.
Yep. Well, thank you so much.
All
And
right.
I will talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you. And stay tuned, people, for more Rephetic podcasts. To know who we are, and where we're going, we must know how we arrived here. Welcome to REPHETIC, a revolutionary study of the Great Pyramid, which promises to rewrite civilization's history.